Beyond the Gates spoilers tease that Kenneth has returned with vengeance in his veins, and this time, he isn't here to forgive. His every step is deliberate, calculated, and born from years of silence, scars, and secrets buried deep in the shadows of Fairmont Crest. What Martin did wasn't just a crime against Kenneth, it was a blow that shattered two lives, Kenneth's and his mother, June. The town had all but forgotten Kenneth. That night years ago when he was brutally beaten and dumped into the freezing river was reported as gang-related. A tragedy. A footnote. Martin, protected by his money and connections, walked free. And June, already struggling with debt from Kenneth's medical needs, sold everything she had. The family home, the jewelry passed down by her mother, even the car she used to get to her night shift. All gone. She poured every cent into keeping her son alive. But when the money ran out and the bills piled up, June had nowhere to go. A dignified woman, she became invisible to the world, sleeping in shelters, moving from alley to alley with only a photo of Kenneth tucked in her coat pocket. Kenneth never forgot. He returns to Fairmont Crest not as a victim, but as a ghost who has learned to wear flesh again. Nobody recognizes him at first. His hair is shorter. His voice deeper. The pain buried behind controlled eyes. He doesn't make waves. He gets a job at a local auto shop under a different name, keeps to himself, listens more than he speaks. But every day, he collects information. He maps Martin's movements, learns the layout of his estate. He studies who comes and goes, who protects him, who dines with him, who owes him favors. What Kenneth sees is clear. Martin hasn't just survived. He's thrived. Wealthier, louder, smugger. Martin's influence reaches far beyond the town. He has politicians in his pocket, ex-military types on his payroll, and security systems advanced enough to rival a government building. To touch Martin is to invite death. But Kenneth isn't looking for a fair fight. He needs a stage. And so the idea begins to take root, not just to kill Martin, but to eliminate everyone who ever protected him. To gather them all in one place and end the cycle with a single act of destruction. Kenneth starts researching explosives. He watches tutorials late into the night, scribbles calculations, sketches blueprints. He doesn't just want a bomb. He wants a message. A monument to justice they can never erase. The hardest part is the bait. Martin has one weakness, his son, Tyrell. A young man with no idea the weight his name carries. Unlike his father, Tyrell is disarming, kind even, and naive in the way only someone protected all his life can be. Kenneth orchestrates a chance encounter at a local gym. He pretends to be a personal trainer. Over the course of weeks, he becomes Tyrell's friend, his mentor. He listens to Tyrell complain about the pressure of being Martin's son. He nods when Tyrell says he wishes his dad would just disappear. Kenneth feeds him carefully constructed truths, all technically factual, none fully transparent. And when the bond is strong enough, Kenneth plants the idea of a business venture, a new kind of boxing academy for troubled youth. Tyrell, eager to prove himself beyond his father's shadow, agrees to meet Kenneth at the location. It isn't an academy. It's a warehouse. Kenneth keeps it barren, echoing, stripped of identity. He chains the back exit, replaces the power with backup generators, installs motion detectors and soundproof insulation. This is where it will happen. Where he will force justice into being. But plans that bold never stay buried. June senses something in her son. The way he stops answering calls, the way he visits only at night, his erratic sleep schedule. One evening, she follows him, staying in the shadows. She sees him slip into the warehouse. Hours later, he exits looking drained but resolute. June waits until he leaves, then breaks in. What she finds shatters her. The blueprints. The explosives lined in storage crates. The photos pinned to the walls, with red excess through the faces of Martin's allies. And the floor plan of Martin's estate marked with circles and arrows. She collapses to the floor, breath ragged, fingers trembling. When Kenneth returns home that night, June is waiting. She says nothing. She simply shows him one of the photographs she took of the warehouse. Kenneth says nothing at first. Then, slowly, without anger or apology, he explains everything. He tells her about the pain, the years lost, the people who watched him bleed and did nothing. He says this is justice, that he has no future anyway. June begs. She pleads. She tells him he is not a killer, that they still have time to expose Martin through the law. She says there are good people still, that the world hasn't abandoned him completely. Kenneth shakes his head. It already did. June threatens to go to the police. Kenneth stares at her for a long time and whispers, "Then you're saving the wrong people." The next night, Kenneth executes Phase 1. He sends anonymous messages to Martin and his inner circle claiming Tyrell has been kidnapped and giving them only one set of coordinates. One chance. No police. Or Tyrell dies. At the same time, he moves Tyrell into the warehouse. Drugged. Bound. Still breathing. June is at a breaking point. She makes one final attempt, sneaking into the warehouse while Kenneth is away. She unties Tyrell. She plans to run. But Kenneth returns sooner than expected. He finds them. His mother holding the boy of the man who destroyed their lives. The betrayal is a wound deeper than the river ever cut. He screams. June pleads. Tyrell is groggy, confused. Kenneth collapses, torn between rage and grief. That night, June does what she never thought she would. She calls the police. The sirens come just as Kenneth begins wiring the detonators. The warehouse is surrounded. Flashlights slash through darkness. A standoff begins. Officers negotiate, but Kenneth doesn't answer. He stands with the trigger in his hand, eyes on the door. He isn't afraid. But this is not the end. Kenneth stands inside the warehouse, surrounded by silence thick enough to drown in. The police floodlight cuts through the windows, but Kenneth doesn't flinch. His finger hovers near the detonator. June's voice, trembling and urgent, echoes through the megaphone just outside. She pleads, not just for the hostages or the town, but for the boy she raised. The boy who used to build Lego towers and hug her in his sleep. She begs him to remember who he was before hate rewrote his name. Inside, Tyrell groans awake, his eyes fluttering open. He sees Kenneth, the man he trusted, who had listened to his stories, who taught him to throw a right hook without losing balance, and fear replaces every ounce of familiarity. Kenneth can barely meet his eyes. The plan had been simple. Create an ending. One that made sense. One that demanded the world acknowledge what had been done to him and to June. But now, with the SWAT team positioning outside and June crying into the megaphone, that clarity fractures. June steps through the open door. She isn't supposed to. Officers shout behind her, but she walks forward, holding nothing but a picture of Kenneth at age 10, smiling, missing a tooth, standing next to his bike. This was before Martin, she says. This was before the hate, before the river. Kenneth looks at the photo but doesn't take it. His hands are shaking now. June keeps walking. You think destroying them makes this right, she says. That killing his son erases what he did to mine? Kenneth whispers, he erased me. But I didn't, she says, stepping closer. And if you go through with this, I lose you too. That's 2 sons gone. Don't make me bury both of you. Tyrell, still tied, manages to find his voice. I didn't know what my dad did, he says hoarsely. But I believe you. I swear I do. Just don't do this. Don't become like him. The room stills. The red light on the detonator glows. Kenneth closes his eyes. Then he drops it. The device clatters to the floor. Sweat rushes in. Kenneth doesn't resist. He doesn't speak. He simply kneels, hands above his head, as the cuffs are locked tight. Outside, the media frenzy begins immediately. The mayor spins the story into a mental health crisis. Martin, watching from a secured location, is advised not to comment. But the news doesn't wait. It digs into his past. The documents June had quietly prepared, hospital records, lawyer emails, missing police statements, are suddenly in the hands of investigative reporters. Whispers become roars. Martin is summoned before a grand jury within 2 weeks. Tyrell testifies, not only about the kidnapping, but about the stories Kenneth shared, the corruption rumors he had once dismissed as paranoia. Public sentiment shifts. Martin's political allies begin to distance themselves. One by one, his inner circle starts flipping for immunity. Meanwhile, Kenneth sits in a detention center. No bail. No visitors. June writes letters every week, updating him on the trial, the changing tide. Sometimes he writes back. Most times he doesn't. But she keeps writing anyway. In court, Martin is brought in under heavy guard. He no longer looks invincible. His suit doesn't fit right. His eyes are bloodshot. The trial is the event of the year. June attends every day, sitting behind the prosecution. The evidence Kenneth never intended for court becomes the backbone of the case. The warehouse blueprints. The list of Martin's allies. Tyrell's testimony. It all converges. Martin is found guilty on multiple counts: conspiracy to commit attempted murder, obstruction of justice, and abuse of power. The sentence is 35 years without parole. Outside the courthouse, June stands among reporters. She doesn't speak. She just holds the same photo she showed her son, a symbol of the boy she fought to protect. Kenneth is offered a plea. 20 years. Voluntary surrender of all details related to the explosives and a public statement discouraging retaliation. He takes it. In prison, he is quiet, respected, feared by some, admired by others. But he stays alone. He never asks for visitors. Until, on the first anniversary of his sentencing, June shows up anyway. They don't talk much. They don't need to. He lets her hold his hand. Tyrell visits once. Unannounced. The meeting is awkward, full of pauses and sidelong glances. But they speak. Tyrell says he's opening a Jima real one. One for kids like Kenneth. He invites him to name it. Kenneth calls it the Breakwater. Years pass. June moves into a modest apartment funded by donations from victims' rights groups. Tyrell's gym flourishes. Martin is forgotten. And Kenneth, locked away but no longer hollow, writes. He starts with the river and ends with a boy finding peace in knowing that sometimes survival is the most powerful revenge of all. Kenneth's writings evolve into something deeper. What began as fragmented notes become structured chapters, dialogue, whole arcs sketched out with the clarity only isolation could bring. His memoir, tentatively titled Below the Surface, quietly circulates through literary circles when June, with the help of a volunteer lawyer, sends out early copies to advocacy groups and small publishers. The response is slow at first, but it builds. An editor at a nonprofit press sees the truth beneath the trauma. The manuscript is accepted. The book is published under a pseudonym, giving Kenneth some distance. Critics call it haunting, raw, important. Book clubs pick it up. News shows ask for interviews he cannot give. But the voice he had once lost now echoes beyond bars. Meanwhile, Tyrell's gym, the Breakwater, becomes more than a fitness center. It transforms into a youth outreach hub. Local teens, many from backgrounds Kenneth once knew too well, find structure, mentorship, and purpose. Tyrell tells Kenneth in a letter, "You didn't just save me. You gave me a blueprint." Kenneth begins mentoring from prison, allowed limited correspondence with young readers and inmates who write to him. He becomes something no one expected, a guide. June visits often. Their bond, frayed by pain and near tragedy, grows stronger with every visit. She brings photos of the Breakwater, letters from kids whose lives have been turned around. She reads him headlines about Martin's old empire crumbling as lawsuits multiply and forgotten victims step forward. One afternoon, years after Kenneth first surrendered, June walks into the prison with something folded in her coat. A letter from the governor's office. It isn't a pardon, but it's a reduction. Kenneth is eligible for early release. He doesn't believe it at first. When the day finally comes, he exits the gates quietly. No reporters. No press conference. Just June, standing at the curb, holding the same photograph she once held in that warehouse. They don't go home. They drive straight to the breakwater. Inside, Tyrell is waiting. The gym is buzzing with energy. Kids are sparring. Coaches shout encouragement. When Kenneth steps through the doors, the energy stills. He isn't introduced. He doesn't need to be. He walks the floor, pausing by a photo on the wall, a shot of him and Tyrell, taken during that one awkward visit. Beneath it is a plaque that reads, "Sometimes the tide doesn't drown you. Sometimes it delivers you." Kenneth takes a deep breath. He doesn't need to destroy anyone anymore. He doesn't need to punish. What he is now is quieter, stronger, lasting. Justice didn't come how he imagined. But it came. And with it, a life worth living. Not as a ghost, but as a man finally returned to shore.